So it's probably possible it's in retaliation to young Dolph. And if that's the case, and that's his brother, you know it's going to continue.
Big Juke's brother, Yo Gotti, undoubtedly carried on the cycle of revenge and put an end to the man who had killed his brother. But Gotti didn't anticipate being pursued by the federal government. There are rumors that the federal government has enough proof to imprison him indefinitely, that the man in the shadows, a certain type of power, functions best in the shadows, not the stage power, not the power of platinum records, billboard charts or packed arenas, but the heavier, more subdued sort that moves things without ever seeming to move, the type that makes choices that others must either live with or die as a result of. That type of strength was Anthony Mims. His name is familiar to you, one of the most popular rappers Memphis has ever produced. Big Juke is the older brother of Mario Mims, better known to the world as Yo Gotti, a key member of collective music group CMG, was Big Juke. With musicians like Moneybagg Yo, Glorilla and SG, Yo Gotti's company developed into a true industry powerhouse. There was never a formal definition of his title at the label. The person on stage wasn't him. Press runs and album releases weren't done by him. When the actual conversations took place, he was the one present. The project manager, the talent scout, and the man whose Instagram feed was filled with endless CMG advertisements were all always present, involved, and in the thick of things. When they killed him, he was 47 years old. Furthermore, it is impossible to tell the tale of his death without first comprehending the story of his life. In particular, how he allegedly waged a private war against a man who had merely refused to join their team, using the resources and authority of one of Memphis's most influential music businesses. Young Dolph was that man. The conflict between CMG and Pre began in 2014, when Adolph Thornton Jr., a young Dolph, revealed in public that he had declined a contract offer from CMG. Dolph reportedly invested $3 million of his own funds to establish Paper Route Empire, and regardless of how alluring the offer was, he had no desire to give up ownership of what he had created to anyone. He had entered a studio with Gotti, listened to the pitch, and then left. However, the way he left and what Gotti had said in that room prior to him sowed the seeds of a resentment that would take years to completely develop, and ultimately result in the deaths of numerous people. Dolph recounted how Gotti cleared the entire room to have a one-on-one conversation with him before disparaging his own signed musicians, Zedzilla and Starlito, as a sales ploy, effectively declaring, "Those guys needed babysitting, but you're different, you're made for this." Dolph saw the betrayal of Gotti's own musicians as a warning sign that provided him with all the information he required about the man he was dealing with. No.
You gonna really sit and downplay your artist and throw your artist up on the bus to try to persuade me in to come over there?
He replied. Dolph claims that Gotti continued to text him for 2 years in an attempt to get him to change his decision, but he kept Paper Route Empire. However,
Yo Gotti was texting my phone for 2 years straight. What you doing, bro? What you working on, bro? Let's do this.
Memphis is a tiny city, a city where defiance is equated with independence. There are consequences that have nothing to do with music when you say no to the wrong person in the wrong room. The silent rejection has erupted in public by 2016. The title of Dolph's debut album, King of Memphis, which was released on the same day as Gotti's The Art of Hustle, directly challenged Gotti's claim to be the city's ruler. Black Young, a CMG artist, arrived in Dolph's South Memphis area that same month with a group of armed people searching for him. The diss tunes appeared. The fights on social media began. Then, in February 2017, Dolph released Play Wit Yobi ***, a full-scale violent and personal attack that specifically targeted Gotti, that made fun of him, included a lookalike in the music video, and embarrassed him in front of the whole rap community. It also specifically targeted Big Juke, which was crucial and deadly. One of the most in-depth documentarians of this whole story, Trap Law Ross, called the song devastating, both personally and artistically, a public humiliation directed at the core of CMG's inner circle.
There was a very vicious diss song where Dolph was dissing Gotti's brother, Big Juke, who obviously has become a big part of this. He's obviously part. Dolph dropped that very, very vicious diss track, you know, absolutely tore Big Juke and Yo Gotti apart. He had the body double in the video.
Being publicly humiliated in a rap video was no laughing matter for a man like Big Juke, who worked in the shadows, possessed real-world authority, and was by all accounts a serious figure in the Memphis street hierarchy. It was something that required an answer. Dolph's armored SUV was hit by more than 100 shots during CIA weekend in Charlotte, North Carolina, in February 2017, 25 days after the diss track was released. Black Youngster was accused of firing a weapon into occupied property together with 2 others. In the end, Youngster's allegations were withdrawn because his truck was bulletproof. Dolph turned to leave. That same evening, he went to perform, and the whole experience was transformed into an album titled Bulletproof. Dolph was photographed outside the Loews Hollywood Hotel in Los Angeles in September 2017. 7 months later, Dolph was staying at the same hotel as Gotti's group. Gotti was not considered a person of interest by the LAPD. A Gotti associate was detained on suspicion of attempted murder before being freed without being charged. In the background of it all was Big Jook. Bill not specifically mentioned in any of these incidents. Functioning precisely as strong guys who work in the shadows are expected to be present in the outcomes, not obvious in the causal relationship. And throughout it all, he was working towards something much more permanent than a drive-by shooting or a failed attempt in Los Angeles, according to what would subsequently be revealed in court. According to reports, he was preparing for a contract murder. Prosecutors also claim that young Dolph wasn't the only person he priced. According to court documents, Big Juke put bounties on almost every member of the Paper Route empire. $100,000 for Dolph Glock is worth $5,050,000 on PR. Snoop bands for $20,000. Grape costs $5,000. A full list of hits. An independent label as a whole was priced out for removal. That list was met with a kind of startled rage on the internet. One statement was shared on social media by Paper Route Empire fans: "Keep Key Glock safe at all times." Because the second most significant artist on pre-Key Glock, young Dolph's cousin and protege, had a $1 million price on his head and was unaware of the obvious risk. On January 12, 2024, Big Juke made his last Instagram post. The caption said, "They are unwilling to confront you. They wish to ensnare you. Remain vigilant. Remain alive. Always keep an eye on your back." He shared that the day before he was shot in front of his mother in a parking lot outside a funeral. The individual who was accused of creating a violent machine against a whole label never appeared in court before any of it legally caught up with him. He passed away. However, the streets moved more quickly than the courts. The $100,000 testimony. On November 17, 2021, young Dolph was distributing Thanksgiving turkeys throughout the South Memphis area at Mikada's homemade butter cookies, returning to the city that shaped him and the kind of community giving that characterized him as a person. When he stopped at a stolen white Mercedes-Benz drew up, and two men emerged with 22 gunshot wounds to their heads, necks, torso, and extremities. The incident was caught on camera. In the location he loved most, young Dolph was dead almost immediately. Among the individuals he has worked to uplift throughout his career, the news reached those closest to him in the manner that disastrous news always does. Without planning. Without compassion. When the call came in.
Never forget. Yep.
Where were you at?
I was at home. Laying down, actually.
Key Glock was at home. He talked about being able to tell a person's voice tone before they ever spoke. That particular frequency at which someone calls your name when something is amiss, when they are only now informing you that the world has already changed beneath you. When asked how he was doing a few weeks later, Key Glock just had one response: content.
Yep.
And did somebody call you, or?
Somebody called me in the house. Like, you know how you can hear when somebody call your name, like the tone of their voice, like you know something wrong, you just don't know what it is.
Neither better nor worse. Right here, the emotional burden that underlies all that came after is that anguish. However, the legal procedure was well on and headed toward a courtroom where Big Juke, the man purportedly at the center of it all,
Dylan, how are you holding up?
I'm content.
would finally be forced to participate in the discussion in the most damaging and public manner possible. Cornelius Smith and rapper Justin Johnson, who records under the name Straight Drop, were detained in January 2022 as the two gunmen. Hernandez Govan was accused of planning the murder. Jamarcus Johnson, Justin's half-brother, was accused of being an accessory for individuals. One individual was deceased, and the question of who ordered the hit went unanswered in public for 2 years, a name that was purportedly well known to everyone in Memphis but had not yet been mentioned in a court of law. Cornelius Smith provided the solution when Justin Johnson's trial eventually started in September 2024. Shortly before the trial began, Smith entered a guilty plea to first-degree murder. He took the witness stand and detailed every meeting, conversation, and movement on the day of the murder in exchange for helping the prosecution against Johnson. Big Juke was the focal point of his testimony. Big Juke had put a $100,000 bounty on young Dolph's life. According to Smith's testimony, he said that Big Juke's orders and payment guarantee were communicated to Smith and Johnson via Hernandez Govan, the purported middleman. The funds were to be split as follows. Johnson and Smith each received $40,000 for being the shooters. Govan's broker fee is $20,000. In his opening remarks, Paul Hageman, the deputy district attorney for Shelby County, said that Big Juke had given Johnson a route into CMG in addition to the money. Prosecutors put it this way: kill Dolph, get rid of the greatest name on the rival label, and get a recording deal with CMG in exchange. One man's blood was used to finance career promotion. Rapper was Justin Johnson's dream job, according to reports. Big Juke and Govan had invited him to Atlanta to discuss his musical career. Prosecutors claimed that a murder contract emerged throughout such discussions. Knowing that Dolph would be out in the community without strict security, Smith explained how he and Johnson followed his whereabouts during the Thanksgiving giveaway period. They followed his car to Makeda's Cookies after spotting it and moved in. Smith acknowledged that Johnson used a handgun, but he shot first using a semi-automatic rifle. In the security footage, he identified himself. He attested to their departure in the pilfered Mercedes, their clothing change at an apartment building, and their subsequent effort to destroy the car. The courtroom came to a halt when Smith made an admission during cross-examination on his daughter's birthday. The murder took place, he admitted it, claimed to have done it for the money. Stated that his family was expected to have a prosperous day. Smith started attempting to get what he had been promised. After the shooting, he kept contacting Johnson. The chats were routed through Justin's half-brother Jamarcus Johnson, who had seized Justin's phone following the murder in order to monitor communications and provide alibis. At first, Smith was unaware of this. He believed he was speaking directly to Justin. For his trouble, he was rewarded with this. A mail delivered to an elderly woman at a front door contained $500. A few days later, Smith's girlfriend picked up another delivery that had been made through middlemen on a street corner. Both participants were disguised to prevent identification. $800 in total, that was the price paid for the life of a guy who had established a $100 million enterprise on his own.
And obviously you're supposed to get $40,000. Right. But you got $500 and left.
Terms and declined $12 million. Label offers because he was aware of his own, worth $800. However, Smith's cross-examination was not particularly combustible. When it came to the payment specifics, Smith said that someone associated with CMG had paid $50,000.
All right, so now we've been paid about $800.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
In legal bills on his behalf, following his detention when questioned by Luke Evans, Johnson's defense lawyer, he was unable to pinpoint the precise person who planned it. The money originated from the CMG side and went to his attorney rather than straight through his hands. Evans, they made a direct push for the idea that the money was payment for services already completed. Smith insisted that he was testifying in order to express his feelings. Regardless, he knew he was headed to prison. He claimed that finally the conscience speaks throughout. The defense questioned his reliability, pointing out that he had first misled to the police, that he had a personal motivation to downplay his own involvement in order to receive a lighter sentence, and that some of his testimony was inconsistent. Luke Evans, Johnson's lawyer, rejected his client's involvement, claiming the physical evidence such as descriptions of clothing and security footage was mostly speculative. In less than 4 hours, the jury rejected the defense. WAC 100, the music management, didn't wait for a jury decision to alert Yo Gotti to the direction this was going, drawing parallels between the 2017 Charlotte shooting and the murder of He speculated on social media that authorities may classify CMG as a criminal gang and bring RICO charges, telling Gotti directly to say his prayers. There hasn't been a public federal indictment, however. The fact that a prominent member of the music industry felt at ease making that prediction in public and on tape speaks volumes about how the testimony changed the discourse. Yo Gotti has not responded to any of the accusations in a single public remark. CMG has not responded. During the trial, the label did not respond to any of the press outlets' attempts to contact them. There was total quiet. The man at the center of it all, whose name was spoken in public court, whose purported bounty list was making the rounds on all hip-hop platforms, and who the prosecution claims created and funded the entire murderous scheme, was already dead. 9 months before to Justin Johnson's trial, Big Juke had been shot, and the darkest part of it all is the tale of how that occurred. The end of it all, the parking lot, and the prison term on January 13, 2024. There was a repast which includes the family, food, and gathering that takes place in the morning after a funeral on Winchester Road at Purnell's Restaurant and Event Center. Eric Buff, a former Memphis cocaine kingpin and a relative of the Mims family, was the guy being buried. Big Juke, Anthony Mims, was present there was his mother. According to reports, Yo Gotti had just left the event. There were gunshots in the parking lot at around 4:15 p.m. After hearing them, a nearby Memphis police officer reacted. Multiple gunshot wounds were discovered on 2 victims after being evacuated to Regional 1 Health in serious condition. The second victim managed to survive. At the hospital, Big Juke was declared dead. The suspect's escape vehicle, a white Ford Explorer with black wheels and dark-tinted windows, was shown on camera by the police. Witnesses attested to seeing the SUV accelerate off right after the incident. Similar to how the CCTV footage from Makeda's Cookies went viral following Dolph's death, the video of Big Juke bleeding out in the parking lot quickly became viral on social media. On camera, both men committed murder. The entire world witnessed both deaths in real time. The terrible symmetry of this whole story was directly addressed by Trap Ross.
Sources close to the family of rapper Yo Gotti confirmed the man killed outside a Hickory Hill event center is Gotti's brother,
who had been recording it for years. That irony isn't lighthearted. Dolph had been killed on camera in broad daylight in a location he often visited. Big Juke is said to have assisted in the death's engineering. Then, at a location where his family had congregated to grieve for someone else, Big Juke was killed in broad daylight while being captured on camera. The violence's mechanics were almost the same. Both times, everything was captured by the cameras. Boosie Badis was personally acquainted with Big Juke. This was true in the sense that people with real connections grieve with specifics and genuine emotions, as opposed to the staged grieving on social media that occurs after a star passes away. Yes, Juke was my partner. 5 days before to the shooting, he had a conversation with Big Juke on a Sunday afternoon.
There was a rumor going around that the shooting happened in front of his mother, and the footage of Juke bleeding out on the ground was even circulating on social media. So it was a very gruesome way, and I don't condone that kind of behavior in any way, but it is very messed up and ironic.
They were interrupted by a parking lot while collaborating on a verse Boosie called a close-knit CMG artist as soon as the news broke, and his message was clear: leave Memphis. Don't go back. Your young daughter needs you. Anyone involved in this circumstance is currently not safe in the city. Big Juke's murder is still unsolved as of the most recent information available. There were no arrests. No suspicions have been made.
But, Dolph got killed on camera. Juke got killed on camera, for the whole world to see.
Public. The investigation is still ongoing. According to the Memphis Police Department, his murder and the young Dolph case have never been linked, according to any official declaration. However, no one who has been paying close attention has ever really contested the unofficial account of events in a community as small and close-knit as Memphis. At Big Juke's own funeral,
Yeah, Juke was my partner.
Really? Okay, I never met him.
Yeah, Juke was my
the security stance said it all. Airborne helicopters. The funeral home was surrounded by rooftop snipers. There was nothing going on in Memphis that day. Everything revolved around a single structure, a single family, and a single group of individuals who had been at the heart of this conflict from the start.
Talked to him probably about 5 days before his death.
After all of this, the city looked like that. An area where the aftermath of violence was so pervasive that even a funeral needed a military-level security operation to get through safely. Let's fast forward to September 26, 2024, Memphis, Tennessee's Shelby County Criminal Court. Sitting at the defense table was Justin Johnson. Straight drop, the man who had supposedly been promised a CMG recording deal in exchange for a murder. Less than 4 hours had passed since the jury began deliberating. Guilty in every way. Murder in the first degree. Murder conspiracy. A felon with a gun. For the murder conviction, Judge Jennifer Mitchell sentenced the defendant to life in prison without the possibility of release. The man who entered Makeda's homemade butter, cookies and shot young Dolph would never be released from prison. Forever. Goodbye. After that one day, the sentence went on. Judge Mitchell came again on November 1st, 2024, to inflict more consecutive time. The conspiracy charge carries a 35-year sentence. The firearm possession charge carries an additional 15 years. Both will be served in addition to the already imposed life term, 50 years of life behind it. A concrete cell in a Tennessee state prison replaced the recording deal that was purportedly offered as a prize, a career at CM, a platform, and a future in music. On October 30th, 2024, Johnson's lawyer filed a motion for a new trial, citing problems with the reliability of the testimony and the evidence. On January 14th, 2025, Judge Mitchell rejected it. The door is shut. Although no formal file has been reported, his attorney has stated that he intends to pursue an appeal. The consequences experienced by those trapped in the wake of this disaster have varied. Justin's half-brother, Jamarcus Johnson, entered a guilty plea to 3 charges of accessory after the fact. He was the one who took Justin's phone following the murder, handled communications, assisted in setting up alibis, and enabled the transfer of funds, instead of the maximum 12-year jail sentence that his crimes carried. Judge Mitchell sentenced with him to a 6-year diversion program in November 2024, volunteering in the community. Drug tests at random. No guns. Lessons on parenting. Courses for career growth. The charges are dropped and expunged if he finishes the program without any infractions. The testimony he provided against his own brother served as the foundation for a second opportunity awaiting his own judicial outcome. Is Cornelius Smith, the first gunman and cooperating witness, who was paid $800 for his involvement in one of the most well-known killings in Memphis history. There has been no official announcement of a trial date. There has been no public disclosure of a plea deal. Prosecutors' willingness to make a bargain in exchange for testimony that has already been given and sentenced another guy to life in prison will determine his Destiny. Hernandez Govan is another. The supposed intermediary, the man who recruited the shooters and mediated the entire deal, according to the prosecution, took Big Juke's instruction and converted it into an operational plan. Govan turned down several plea offers, one of which was made as recently as July 2025, and after being postponed from March 2025 to July 28, 2025. His trial was finally set for August 18, 2025. Throughout, he has continued to enter a not guilty plea. He has a $90,000 bail. He faces life in jail if found guilty of the murder charge. What transpired in late July 2025 is what makes Govan's case especially noteworthy at this time. In his case, Judge Mitchell sealed all pretrial motions, state responses, and court decisions so that the public could not view any of them. The seal's purpose has not been made public. Information that could jeopardize other ongoing proceedings, sensitive investigative evidence, or protected witnesses may be involved. There was something in those documents that was deemed too private to be made public. No one outside that courtroom knows what that object is. This is not the end of the narrative. And throughout it, all the trial, the bounty list, the disclosure of the $50,000 legal fee, the testimony linking his brother to a murder-for-hire plot, the cautions from insiders in the music business on possible RICO investigations. Yo Gotti has not spoken in public at ALLCMG has not released a statement. The label and the guy who created it have been silent for so long that it has turned into a statement in and of itself. Yo Gotti is not facing any charges. There was no federal indictment, no RICO application, no public designation in any of this as a person of interest. That is the current state of the factual record. No one is yet aware of what the sealed records in Govan's case may eventually disclose. This is what we do know: a man who supposedly worked covertly for years, who had authority without a title, and valued rappers' heads as they were video game reward targets before he ever had to answer for any of it in court. The man passed away in a parking lot outside of a funeral, despite never recording a single song for the label he was purportedly promised. The man he allegedly hired to pull the trigger is currently doing life, plus 50 years in a Tennessee state jail. The judge has sealed the evidence, keeping the public in the dark about what will happen next, while the man who supposedly mediated their arrangement is still awaiting trial. Big Juke's own murder is still unsolved. The White Ford Explorer has long since vanished from the streets of Memphis. The case file is open. The suspects are unidentified. There is no end in sight to the ongoing probe. Memphis never stops. The paper route empire never stops. In May 2025, Key Glock's a man with a $50,000 price tag on his head released an album signed to Republic Records, paying tribute to his cousin and the founder of his label in the only way that made sense for him. During labor. To view further films similar to this one, click on one of the cards on your screen.